So there are various layouts that you can use. You can check some more. So the one that I had before was the circle one, and I click that and it looks like that. So let me just go back to the standard one for the moment. The standard one? Yes, so, and I can do it again. I can do it again. Let's try another one for a moment. Try that one. Okay, so let's say we have this layout like that. And now I've taken it back to the Fruchterman one. And this one is not so good usually, or in some ways it's not so good because remember that just because these two edges are crossing, that is not, there's no node there, so that's not really of any significance. And this could easily, but that can kind of throw you off when you're looking at the picture of it. You might sort of think that there is some significance. So this layout usually will give you those kinds of crossings. So it might be better, say, to choose the circle, which tends not to have those kinds of unnecessary crossings. And experimenting with the different layout types can sometimes reveal useful patterns and relationships or unusual features in the data set that we're analyzing. Now in this data set there's not that much to see, but we'll see that later. Now as of this lecture, I hadn't talked about what's the difference between a directed graph and a non-directed graph, or we hadn't actually talked about directed graphs. We've only talked about what are called non-directed graphs. But sometimes we're interested in what's called like a directed graph, and actually that's what's shown here because these edges have an arrow on them. We didn't really talk about that in class yet, but that's sometimes useful. So if this is meant to depict friendships, then the arrow is really not significant. You know, if Gary is friends with Helen, then we'll say that Helen is also friends with Gary, so there's no reason to have an arrow. On the other hand, it might be that Gary invited Helen to a party. This might be who invited who, and in that case the arrow has some significance and you might want to show an arrow for that, not just a directed line. So if these edges are supposed to depict who invited who, then you really would like to know which is at the beginning of the arrow and what's at the tip of the arrow. And you can change that up here at the top here. It says directed. You click on that and you can make it undirected. And then you have to click refresh, I think, over here. And now it's an undirected graph. And you can change it back to directed. And if you want to update the graph pane, so you might add in here, over here on the left, maybe you add some new data. Maybe you have add and Gary. Do we have that already? I think not. Let's see. So now, but that doesn't, there's no change here on the graph because you have to click refresh the graph, and now you have something like that. And instead of using these layouts up here, you can actually just move the dots around if you want. I can click on them and move them around. Actually, for some reason, I don't know why I can't do that. I think it's because of the recording software that I'm using, so I somehow can't move them around. But you can just move them around manually. And you can even select multiple vertices by like drawing a box around them, or clicking on additional vertices and holding down the control key, and then moving them. And there may be, you may want to preserve a particular layout. Maybe you set up a manual layout that you like, and you want to preserve that, and you can do that as well. And you can do that by going to here and selecting none, and then refresh. And the refresh doesn't change it, so that's a kind of manual layout. There are other ways to do this, but that's one way. And we saw that you can zoom in and you can zoom out. And you can also use the what is it, the wheel on your mouse, I think. How's that work? Yeah, like that. I'm using the wheel on the mouse to make it bigger and smaller. You can do that as well.